I'm Karol, Ruth Silverstein. That's my official author name, but you can call me Karol. I currently live in West Hollywood, California. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and I am a children's book author and a poet. I also draw and sing daily just for fun. It relieves stress. I was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis when I was 13. And I really just thought of it as a chronic illness most of my growing up. And then at 21, I had my first joint replacement surgery. And I stayed almost a month in a rehab hospital, which ended up being an incredibly empowering experience for me. And I really demarcate, my transition from a person with a chronic illness to a person with a disability. I know that I come from a lot of privilege just based on my skin color, based on, being middle class growing up. I never really thought much about disability or disabled people or their rights or their needs before I got sick. And since I've become disabled, I'm much more aware of how meaningful the ADA is and also how it really had its starts in the civil rights movement and the women's movement and Stonewall and like all of the marginalized groups and communities that came before me really paved a way for legislative change, attitude change. So I'm very grateful to the forefathers of a civil rights movement, and I'm very fearful that these things are going to be dismantled. Um, that's like a clear and present threat for me that my life will just be completely upended arbitrarily because of changes in laws and leadership. And that's sort of like I'm in a bit of an existential crisis. I had all those sort of ableist messages growing up, as an able-bodied person without any personal connection to someone with a disability, which is why I think these stories are great. And which is why, my first book that I wrote it was about a kid who's newly diagnosed with arthritis. And I sort of told the story that was closer to my experience rather than some of the stuff I've been seeing, which was very inspirational, or they had a whole lot of support and it was like really uplifting. Mine is uplifting eventually, but my kid got to be really angry and even self-pitying a little bit because that's where I was. And growing up, I wasn't a jock. I wasn't in band. My family wasn't religious. I'm straight and cis. I'm just a average white girl. Like I didn't have a community. I wasn't a nerd. I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't have that group that I really felt a part of. And when I became disabled, it was like suddenly I had a community. And, I've since learned that that community is gigantic and there are lovely people and there are horrible people and everyone in between. But it was like I had people for the first time. My life was sort of off track. I had dropped out of high school, got a GED, wasn't in college. And there was psychological visits in the rehab hospital as part of the medical plan. And I got to really talk about like, what am I doing with my life? And I decided to go back to college. And I was deciding between this career in entertaining that I had always dreamed of or something more practical. And I decided I'm just going to go for it. And just really was a force to be reckoned with in undergraduate school. It really gave me determination and chutzpah I never had before. It gave me a sense of purpose. Um, it's really physically hard. I've had a lot of surgery. I'm very frustrated a lot of times. If a fairy came down with a magic wand and said, I can make you able-bodied and nothing, you don't have to trade me anything. Would I say yes? I mean, it would just make my life a lot easier. But it's given me that sense of belonging and that sense of who I am and just insane determination and troubleshooting. Read books by disabled writers about disabled characters, because that's where you're going to get the real juice. And there's a lot of them being published these days. There's just a plethora. There's horror, there's, coming of age, there's mystery, historical fiction. It's out there. So seek it out.